Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I know that we have all complained not once, not twice, probably dozens, if not hundreds of times in our lives about the fact that education and the traditional educational system does not set youth up for success later in life. And of course, it takes a true entrepreneur to identify that gap and come up with a solution. And that's why I'm so in love with today's entrepreneur's business, because this is somebody who really cares about reshaping and shaping in a positive way the way that youth gain essential skills in the marketplace, but also in life. And that's why I'm a big believer in entrepreneurial innovation, as is today's guest. He's a shining example of that. So let me introduce you to Nitin Gour. Nitin is the founder and CEO of Bloomster because he is passionate about transforming education to focus on holistic student development. Bloomster is a dynamic platform that empowers students by teaching over 25 essential life skills, helping them thrive in 5 key areas critical to navigating today's ever-changing world. It's going to be so interesting to hear how Nitin attacks that, because it's true. The world is changing every single day. With nearly 2 decades of experience in the corporate world, spanning technology and finance, he came to recognize that academic success alone isn't enough to prepare young individuals for real-life challenges. He saw a pressing need for an education model that fosters self-awareness, confidence, and well-rounded growth, and that's why that realization inspired Nitin to leave the corporate sector in 2022 to establish Bloomster, a mission-driven platform dedicated to closing the gap in traditional education by equipping students with the skills they need to succeed in school and beyond. There's going to be a lot of food for thought, and most importantly, I'm so excited to be inspired by Nitin's journey in making a massive difference, not in just one industry, but societally. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Nitin Gour. All right, Nitin, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for that kind introduction that you gave. Really delighted to be here.
Heck yes, especially listeners won't know, but you and I live right down the road from each other, so it's always good to have fellow Floridian-based entrepreneurs here on the show. But Nitin, obviously you didn't originally come from Florida, just like I didn't, which alludes to the fact that you've got a very interesting backstory about how you ended up doing all the cool things. So let's start there. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Nitin? How did you start doing all these things?
Absolutely, and thanks for that question. So like many entrepreneurs, Brian, my life's journey hasn't been a straight line. It's been a series of pivots, decisions, slow burning realizations, evolving understanding, and thought process that ultimately led me to where I am today. And I'm proud that I went through that whole journey. But a lot of entrepreneurs, maybe you've heard, they just woke up one day, they had that stroke of genius, and they started on a path, and that's what led them where they are today. But mine didn't happen like that. I started my career in technology after earning my degree in computer science. After 6 years in tech, starting from a junior most position, rising up to a project manager, I pivoted to finance, where I spent nearly 18 years working for Citigroup. Again, I started as an analyst, junior most position, worked my way up, and eventually left while I was serving as a director in its capital markets division. I mean, all that was great. You can look at my finance career into 2 halves. The first half was all about learning. Everything was new to me. I had to roll up my sleeves, working 70, 80 hours a week, taking clients out for nice dinners, social events, sports events. Everything was great. I thought I had made it. Life was great. And by the way, Citi is a great place to work. But there was a persistent, even though with all the prestige and success of being at one of the top financial institutions in the world, I always felt that persistent void, a feeling that perhaps there's something more, something beyond corporate hustle, something more meaningful. And everybody will derive meaning in different ways. But I wasn't feeling it. I wanted something more. So I embarked on a personal journey of discovery. And what I found in that discovery phase led me to create Bloomster, a platform designed to equip children with skills they need to thrive in the real world. Because at the end of the day, with all my thinking, introspection, and research and whatnot, talking to experts and all, I got to a point where to me, success isn't about career milestones or material achievements. It's about how we navigate through life and how enjoyable and successful that journey is. So that's what I got to. Obviously, my this discovery phase, as I said, was quite long. It almost spanned more than half a decade, I would say. In that discovery phase, I discovered two big key things, which were fundamental to why I decided to quit that amazing job and started doing something on my own, which is this Bloomster. The first thing was related to the education world. I saw a big gap between the academic world and the professional world. And then this was very personal. I connected the dots from like how I grew up, my own upbringing. Obviously, that's dated. So I basically then looked at my friends, my colleagues, their kids, and how the education system was contributing towards their growth and development. And I could clearly see that there is a big gap between the academic world and the professional world. My career allowed me this opportunity to work with extremely talented individuals coming from top universities with great experience from coming from different industries and backgrounds. And with Citi's global footprint, I was working with colleagues from different countries as well. And I was coordinating with folks from accounting firms, tax firms, consulting firms. My exposure was global, so it wasn't an issue about like Eastern world or Western world or this country or that country. I could clearly see it's a global issue. So that was one thing. Let me double click on that. So initially, when you're starting your career, you are basically doing that technical grunt work, I would say. But I could clearly see that that is not enough to be successful in any domain or whatever you're working on. Because as you rise up, and as I was looking at my career, I was required to lead teams. You're required to lead teams. You're required to mentor your junior colleagues. You're required to have those tough conversations. You're required to give those reviews, hire and fire. You're required to sell transactions both internally and externally. So you're required in a way to be a leader. And we don't focus on those skills early on. And generally, you would see at least my circle and all, we all focus on those skills when we are in our early 30s or mid 30s. And while we are working and dealing with those tough situations at the same time, in my opinion, that is a bit too late. And I thought I need to do something about that. Let's put a pin in there. The second big thing, I'll come back to that. The second big thing that I realized was related to technology. It's not about the technical developments that have been happening in the last 2 decades. My concern was more to do with the pace at which things were changing. Because if you see how the development has happened with mobile phones, like smartphones and social media and all, we were already so overwhelmed with this technology, the amount of data that was produced and that we are exposed to. It took us more than a decade to realize that what we call social networks are not actually social networks. They're actually making us antisocial, unhappy, in most cases depressed as well. So that was happening. And then now this AI. And I'm not painting a doomsday scenario. A future with AI is incredible. But I feel like we need to be prepared for that world, because that world is going to change so much. That world is going to be dominated by machines and robotics. So most of our stuff that humans are doing today will be done by machines, algorithms and all. Constant change. So you'll see that every few months things will change and you'll have to adapt to new things. And extraordinary unpredictability. So every 6 months, we would have no idea what's coming our way in 6 months from now, maybe from different countries or whatever. So that kind of stuff is going to happen. That will be a reality. And I can clearly see that if you look at what's happening with these big firms, which ones I'm talking about. So with all that, I feel like the individual who will need to thrive in that world will need to be learn new stuff on a regular basis, adapt to change, be resilient, have a growth mindset, learn from their failure, and do all this over and over again, because AI will continuously change the game. So we need to prepare our kids for that kind of future. So when I saw what we need in the professional world, and what I saw what's happening in technology and how the future is shaping up, I thought like something needs to be done, and that's when I started my research. And then still it took me several years to, I would say good 3 years, to figure out what I want to do. When I talked to several experts, and I got to a point that we need to focus on these fundamental skills, these essential life skills that I think kids would need in that environment. So that's when I decided, okay, it's time to quit my job and start working on this platform, and that's how it started.
Yeah,
So that's my
I'll tell you what, there's so many parts of that story that get me excited to go deeper. And obviously, as someone who interviews entrepreneurs for a living, and I interact with entrepreneurs every single day all over the world, I'll share this with you. One part of your story that I really admire is the fact that all too often entrepreneurs, innovators in any industry, you don't have to be an entrepreneur for this to be true, it's easy to solve small problems. If you and I are at work together and, emails aren't going through, okay, we have a very clearly defined problem that we have to solve. We can attack that. We can start looking into DNS and MX records and fix it accordingly. But it's those big problems that often make people overwhelmed and make people just paralyzed. We talk about paralysis by analysis, but there's also, it's just such a big bite that I don't know where to start. What I really admire about your story and your journey and what you're doing with Bloomster is this is a massive societal problem, and you've chosen to tackle it head on. You didn't take one piece of the apple that you want to solve. You want to work on the entire all-encompassing thing. And you talked about that, those 3 years to really analyze and say, hey, what's the right way to solve it? What's your take on that? Because we do see too many people thinking small, so they find small answers. You're thinking big, you're finding big answers. Talk to us about that very intentional approach on your end.
Right, absolutely. And thanks, Brian, for confirming that. Yes, this is a big problem. And as a society, we're doing a huge disservice to our children by just focusing on academics. I don't know what's about those grades that we keep pushing our kids to get all A's and whatnot. Those are not going to be that relevant in the society that's going to, coming our way in 5 to 10 years from now. So that's a big thing. And you're absolutely right that it's about reframing what education means. Like, I'm trying to change the mindset, because if it was a simple problem, as you're pointing out about emails and all, there are several of those. There's a good solution to it, and you can come up with it and create an app or a solution. That's a small thing. But to change mindset, it's been a journey, and I don't think and I'm there yet. So it's going to take me a few more years to get to a point where I can say I've made a dent in this, and that's my mission actually, to help children develop these skills. But I'll also add a point that even talking to experts and all, in the end, I got to a point where I watched a video that, let's imagine that you're on your deathbed, and would you regret not making that decision back when you were thinking about it to jump and do this? And my answer was clear, yes, I have to do this. So I started doing this. But now to get to your point, yes, I had to discuss this with a lot of experts, PhDs, teachers, and do my own research. There's nothing novel that I've created. There are certain standards about social emotional learning, and I can talk about that. So as humans, we are used to structures and all. So all I've done is categorized, and I've named it as our Bloomster's holistic learning model. And we have 5 dimensions, and I've taken those 25 plus skills, as you mentioned in my intro, and organized them into these 5 dimensions. And that became my model. And then I built what should be the delivery mechanism, how am I going to teach self-awareness or self-confidence or resiliency. So then it became how are we going to deliver? And then after discussions and research and all, it finally came together. It took me a year to actually, even after quitting my job, to starting to actually shaping this product, Bloomster. It took me a year to get there, and that was a lot of work around that.
Yeah. It makes me want to ask you this question, because I know that your story is going to be inspiring for so many listeners from all different walks of life, because oftentimes when I interview entrepreneurs, there's some sort of overlap between their corporate career, because let's face it, we've all had jobs at one point in our lives or another. You had a really awesome corporate career. Someone from the outside looking in would think that you're doing something completely different. It is a complete change in course. I'm sure that there are things you picked up throughout your corporate career in finance and in all the corporate environments that you've been in. that do translate to what you're doing as the founder and CEO of Bloomster. But on the other hand, it is a totally different industry. It is a complete change. And I'm sure that family members and friends are just like, Nitin, where did that come from? How's that shift? Talk to us about that, because I think that too many people believe that they are boxed in by the industry that they've been in, the skills that they're in, maybe the degree that they have. You just seem to transcend that and say, doesn't matter. I'm going to learn exactly what I need to. I'm going to talk to experts. You've already shared that part of your growth journey with us, and you're going to make it happen. How'd you navigate that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. And another fun fact is, it was not easy, Brian, to leave that steady and safe job, because I struggled with thinking that, am I being too comfortable in my comfort zone here? Because I could do that job, my eyes closed, I got to a point where I was good at it, and I did that for several years, as I mentioned. So just deciding to take the next step, and you end up doing a lot of that analysis paralysis kind of a thing. But I would say it was worth it to go through all of that, and then ultimately jump and do what I'm doing. In that phase, yes, I had to sort of this is in a very different industry, but there were fundamental things that I could take from it. I had the technology background, and finance gave me obviously finance knowledge, but also paying attention to details. But as a banker, because we are dealing with large sum of money, and our transactions were very complex, and that also gave me the exposure, as I mentioned, dealing with internal teams and control functions, approving our transactions, selling our transactions internally, and also coordinating with clients. So all of that exposure helped me in my own evolution as a CEO, as a leader, so that I could at least shepherd this whole, I'm a product guy as well, so that technical background helped me with that. So I could lead this. So all of that helped me. But ultimately, again, you have to take that leap of faith. No matter how much analysis you do, how much thinking you do, when the rubber hits the road, that's when you learn, what you're made of. And I'm glad I did that, and I learned a lot about myself. As even I love that quote from Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan unless they get a punch in their face. So I think, so you will get punched. That's what I got the first couple of years until I launched my beta. Was tough, but if you're at it, if you truly believe that that this is your mission, this is your calling, and that's what I got to, then you don't look back. It's just keep forging your way forward, and that's what I'm doing every day.
Yeah, I love that. And it sounds like that personal development side of it. I love the fact that you never understate that as part of your journey. I always think about it. So just to call out, you and I obviously both live in the Tampa Bay area, and we're surrounded by some of the most beautiful. St. Pete Pier, for example, is incredible. There's all those boats just sitting there. And I always think about that quote where it says something like, ships are safe in harbor, but they were never meant to stay there. I think about that so frequently, and you talk about it with your corporate job. It's those golden handcuffs. It does feel safer to stay there. It does feel like stability, but there's always that yearning for more. And it's so clear to me that part of your yearning for more really comes from the fact that you see a different future. And I think we all know there's going to be a different future. I don't think as many people step up to the plate to be a part of shaping that different future. And my niece and nephew, they're 7 years old, so they are in first grade now. And it's so cool to see that their eyes light up when I show them Midjourney, which is just an AI art thing. It's not something I'm very adept with, but I didn't grow up with those things. They're going to be able to create anything that they dream of. And that's why I'm glad there's innovators like you shaping their educational futures. They're going to learn things that you and I never learned in childhood. Talk to us about that view that you have. You've already thrown some shade at traditional grades. I agree. No one ever asks me what my GPA is. And I'm like, why did I care so much about my GPA when I was in college? Nitin, talk to us about your view of the future and how Bloomster is really aligned with that view.
Right. No, thanks for that question. Actually, that's exactly why I've created Bloomster. The thing is, I have mixed opinions. Obviously, as I mentioned, the future with AI is incredible. We will learn so much from it, and it will help us, take humanity to a whole different level. But I'll take a very simple example. If you remember, when we were in college and all, when we were at least writing applications, I remember writing my application for my master's. I did my MBA from NYU. And you start with that problem statement, the question that you have to answer, and then you're staring at that blank Word document. And you have to really push your creative muscles and think through where to start. And the hardest part is getting started, that first paragraph. And then, you're in the rhythm, things start to flow, and you can, complete your essay or whatever you're writing on. But these kids today, your niece, for example, and I have a 4-year-old, and when she is of the age at that time, they just have to write that prompt. And that thing spits out 1,000 words, so beautifully written that you cannot, even a professional writer with years of experience will have difficulty, getting to that level. And I'm telling you, I am blown away when I see content that it generates. It's amazing. So my point here is these kids will never develop those creative muscles. I mean, at least we got a chance to work on those. We are at some level. Yes, we can improve. But these kids will get so used to that. So Bloomster, my quest is to help them understand, help them be self-aware. At least thinking about themselves, that introspection, what they're good at, their strengths and weaknesses, their values and beliefs, what matters to them, why it matters to them. The more they think about that, and early on they think, by the time they're of the age, they will be in a position that they can step back and see if this is going to help me or not. Let me spend 10 minutes before writing that prompt, because obviously if you write the prompt, you'll get the answer right away. But they should know that writing the prompt, yes, they'll get the answer, but will they have that mindset to apply anything they're thrown into a different situation? They'll not get that prompt or AI thing at every place. Let's say they're in an interview and then they're asked a question, they're not going to have a prompt. So they need to be prepared for all those. So we're trying to build the foundation. These are fundamental skills that we're trying to teach. So that's the idea here. The future obviously is, as I keep repeating, and I don't know if you came across this report that came out earlier this year by World Economic Forum. It's called Future of Jobs Report. And that clearly states that hundreds, tens of thousands and millions of jobs will be affected in the future. Either they'll be significantly influenced by algorithms or robotics, or completely done by machines, or significantly influenced. So if that is happening, and the reports also says that humans will have to start thinking about enhancing their skills now, you can't be so complacent and look, wait, this is what I'm doing and I'll just do it for another 30 years and I'll retire at some point. That's not going to happen. In another 5 to 10 years, yeah, I'll be doing a job for sure. So with all of that, as I said, it's about building that foundation of our kids, and that's what Bloomster is focused on. That's what these skills are going to do.
Yeah, Nitin, it is not lost on me that every time you talk about these things, you keep using that word skills. And I think that that's such an important, really, that's an attitude that we have to adopt in ourselves, because whether I'm praising you for investing in your own personal development, that's a skill. That is a practice. That is things that you didn't just learn, but you actually put it into practice. It's clearly every single thing I've seen about Bloomster publicly, it's so clear to me that you embrace that same philosophy in the way that Bloomster helps the kids that it serves. And so whether we're talking about low confidence or self-doubt, or we talk about being anxious or overwhelmed, you come back to skills in all of these. You've got to talk to us about that, because I think that societally, again, coming back to labels, we're quick to put labels on someone as, oh, that's a highly anxious person. Oh, that person has low confidence. Talk to us about your philosophy and approach to the fact that these are skills and we can practice them.
Oh, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, actually. And a lot of people have this misconception that these are you're born with these things. No one is. Because we look at that success, let's say Tiger Woods, Michael Phelps, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, you look at when they are at their top of their career or whatever they are doing, and we just start comparing. Okay, there must be something special about them, but it's not like that. If you follow them, I mean, take Steve Jobs, for example. I've read some books and articles and all. If you look at him, how he was presenting way back, when he was starting, you could clearly see he's not the same Steve Jobs of early 2000s, right? Yes, he is like the very charismatic person, but he worked on that for years. Like you could see his development year after year. People, those who have like followed him, wrote books on him, they confirmed this thing. So these are skills that can be learned, and you can master them and slowly improve on them. I mean, I'm a good example. Like, and a lot of kids, I'll put myself in that bucket. Like, math was like a challenging thing. I wouldn't say I was bad at it, but I wouldn't call it, I was an average kid. But at that time, obviously you have those like kids sitting in the front row. They'll raise their hand like they have the answer for every problem, and teacher would look at them and move on to the next thing. And I'm like, okay, I didn't get it. Kids will be quick, and I did too, like maybe there's something wrong. Why am I not understanding? So you get into that mode of blaming yourself, labeling yourself, as you were pointing out. And we do that to others as well. Like there must be something wrong with that kid. I think if we can teach our kids to just like, do this inventory of their strengths and weaknesses, that's also part of my self-awareness course. It's basically about exploring yourself. And if once you understand that what are your strengths and weaknesses, maybe you'll like, think about it very differently. You'll think, okay, you know what, maybe it takes me slightly longer than this kid. I'll just work on it. I'll go home, practice a little, come back to the next class, and I'm the same guy. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. So you are also more vulnerable at that time for asking for help if you know your strengths and weaknesses. Because you're not labeling yourself. You'll go to your teacher or your friend or your parents. You know what? I'm having difficulty. Can you teach me this thing? So doing those exercises, you can improve on this. These are skills. There's nothing like, you can suddenly like, one day, super confident kid. You have to work on this year over year. And that's what I'm like, trying to do with Bloomster, with our courses and all. It's a slow process. I know that. But if you're at it, any skill that Bloomster offers, you can master it. It's just a matter of time.
Yes, so well said. Nitin, I'll tell you what, my biggest regret about any of these podcast interviews is the fact that they are so short. Obviously, we live in a generation where 30 minutes is about our target for most long-form pieces of content. But with that said, I want to so publicly praise you. I think that not only what you're doing with Bloomster is absolutely brilliant, and I'm so glad that it's part of what's ushering in that next era, the more effective era of education for our countries and really our world's youth. But even beyond that, Nitin, the more that I'm in the entrepreneurial world, the more I hear experts far smarter than me talk about it's the founder behind the businesses. That's really what's going to drive it. And I will personally say, as someone who's had the chance to interview you today and interact with you, I'm so amazed at you, the brain, the mastermind behind all the things that you're doing. It's your attitude, it's your personal development, it's how much you put your own philosophies into practice. So I'm really grateful that it's you that's behind the helm of Bloomster, and I'm excited for listeners to check out Bloomster. But before I invite you to drop those links on listeners and direct them where to find more, I'm going to put you on the spot one last time, and that is to ask you, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? We talked about so much entrepreneurial goodness today, a lot of the strategic stuff, a lot of the mindset stuff, but listeners are both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys. And as a fellow entrepreneur, what's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
I'll just say, for an entrepreneur, we all have some voice like, coming to our head. Most of the time we tend to ignore it. I'd say, there's a lot of crap also that comes up, but if there's something that's persistent and you hear it over and over, I would say like pay attention to it. Do give it a think. Then also at the same time, don't overthink think it also, because again, you can get into this loop of like just overanalyzing, that analysis paralysis kind of a thing. But definitely then listen to it and just like, just take a leap of faith. I'm sure you will like, struggle initially, but ultimately you'll get to where you want to be.
Well said. That leap of faith, you're right. There are so many uncertainties in every single journey in life and business and every single thing that we choose to do. So I love the fact that you inspire and encourage listeners to follow in your footsteps there, because it's so cool what you've built. And along those lines, I am excited for listeners to actually see Bloomster in action. I will say, from the outside looking in, your branding, the way you present this stuff, your emphasis on the 5 essential dimensions of emotional well-being, the way that you lay all of this stuff out for for people. It's so clear. Also, there's some brilliant marketing lessons in there. I really admire the fact that if parents or educators aren't sure where to begin, you have a course fit quiz to discover the best courses that a specific child should be working on. So lots of brilliant lessons to learn from you. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Oh, definitely. It's all on our website. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, where we have a team to engage with you over there. You can also engage with us on LinkedIn. But the best place is to start with Bloomster.com. And I'll leave you with I can't do this alone. This is, again, as I mentioned, I'm trying to change the mindset here of what truly the education means, because we're so used to measuring education with grades, test scores, and academics, and we only see academics as the only path to success. But that's not true. So I would say I need help from parents. Just try Bloomster and give me feedback. I'm here to improve the platform. You don't have to as the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, and that's true. And you don't have to do it alone. I'm here with you. Let's do it together. And this platform, I will do whatever it takes to help your child build these skills for that future so that they can thrive in it. Yeah.
Yes, I'm so appreciative of the way that you show up. And listeners, you hear me at the end of all of these interviews remind you of the fact that the guests that we have on air, these are real life people, real life entrepreneurs, just like you and I. You've heard how accessible Nitin is and how much he wants to see Bloomster succeed because he wants it to serve people. So do not be shy in reaching out. The URL is bloomster.com. But if you're on the go, no worries. We're dropping the links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning in. Otherwise, Nitin, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
All right. Thank you, Brian. I was really excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate it.